Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Big thank you to Kurt. Kurt asked me a little while ago, about a week ago, and unfortunately I couldn't do it then. I had dreaded toothache. But anyway, tonight um, he's very kindly going to be taping this, and I really appreciate it. Um, I suppose there's a story that has to be told, and it needs to be done around the campfire. It has to be done when there's a full moon. Well, I don't think we've got a full moon tonight, but who knows? And it'll become apparent later on as to why you needed a full moon to tell the story by. Uh, it's a story that was told to me by my father, Leslie Carter, and it's basically I wrote it down and sort of played with it um, to for my grandchildren and children and grandchildren, and for anyone else who might be interested. Uh, I think we need to start somewhere way back when. We need to sort of maybe just set the scene. Now, the scene, funny enough, is basically right where you are now, just in front of the prep school, and probably a little bit further away down towards where the horses' stables are, and it works its way through the school, which wasn't a school then, down to the bottom of the valley. That's the scene. We need to talk about firstly the chap George. I'm not calling him Deadshot George because he wasn't Deadshot at that stage. He was just George. George was born in the UK around the 1820s, 1850s, 1820s, and he was a bit of a rapscallion, if anyone knows what a rapscallion is nowadays. And he got involved with all sorts of nefarious stuff around London and the three counties. And he sort of decided that he actually needed a break and get away because I think the police were after him, and I think they were called peelers in those days. And he'd been involved with it. He certainly didn't want to get taken to Australia. Definitely not. So he decided that he was going to try and get a passage on a ship to South Africa. So we all know the 1820 settlers came out at about, it would have been a little bit later that he left England, probably in about 1830, round about there, 1835. And he got on a ship to Algarve Bay. Anyway, he arrived in Algarve Bay, and of course, there wasn't a hell of a lot for him. He wasn't a farmer. He didn't have any skills or anything like that, apart from the fact that he knew how to con people out of money. So he decided that the best thing for him to do was to get involved with what he was doing back in England way back when. And he was pickpocketing people in PE. PE wasn't big in those days, but there were ways and means but he couldn't really make a living. So he decided that, possibly these people that were traveling around, they could be relieved of some of their money or their goods and chattels. And he got involved, and he sort of saw that there was definitely an area where he could get involved and he could make some money. And so he managed to get himself a horse, beautiful black horse, black because at night this horse couldn't be seen, and also during the daytime it could sit in the shadows and they couldn't catch him. So he got involved, and he sort of started off his nefarious time probably between Thornhill and the Gamptons Ferry, and then a little bit further on towards Jeffreys Bay. But there were other people involved doing there as well, and he didn't want to have any competition. So he said, okay, thought, if you come from Port Elizabeth and you travel along the road in those days, we all know that it's as flat as a pancake. And there's not really any place at all where you could stop and hold up people and relieve them of their excess money. So he decided that you need to have a look around. So he spent his time from green bushes down this way and bottom of the valley here, and then going up the other side. There's a farm that's, I don't know if it's still called that today, but it was called Blackguard's Neck. Now, a blackguard, as you know, was basically a highwayman, and he'd been working in that area, but there were too much competition. So he decided he was going to work this area here, and he had a bit of success stopping people here and stopping people there. But while he was doing this, he discovered that the Van Statens Valley was actually, in fact, an excellent place for an ambush, because the old road ran straight past the prep here, down basically the road past the college now, not round the hall, that wasn't there, and along towards the valley, and then down the valley road. And at the bottom of the valley road, there was a beautiful spot, and any of you have been down there, as you get to the bottom of the valley, on the left-hand side, there's a bush and cover and stuff like that. So he thought, this is the place to do it. This is where I'm going to do it. And had a couple of successes and all the rest of it. In the meanwhile, at the top of the pass here, where the horse stables are now, was it was an inn, aptly called Pig and Whistle. I don't know whether it was before the Pig and Whistle in Bathurst, but it was definitely called the Pig and Whistle. And the guy there used to be collecting tolls for the farmers who used to come through the valley going out towards Gantus, and people coming on the way back again. And the innkeeper there, he had an inn there just to help people out. They could spend the night there. And where the horses are now tethered, and you see all the other beautiful horse paddocks there, was an outspan. Now the outspan was used for people with the wagons. They could spend the night there in their wagon, or they could go to the inn, which didn't sell castle in those days, unfortunately. It sold just the bare essentials. Now the innkeeper had a rather luscious looking daughter, had two in fact. The one's name was Liz, and the other's name was Mary. And Liz was was quite in love with old George. And George was quite enamored by her as well. He wasn't known as a highwayman there, but he used to stop there and have a chat to his beloved Liz. And she used to keep him in contact unwittingly about what was coming through. So he knew roughly what was going through on the way down through the pass and up on the way to Cape Town. Well, it so happened it was just before Christmas, Liz heard someone talking in the pub, and she heard that they were going to be sending a consignment on the stagecoach. It had come from Kimberley. So we can imagine that on the stagecoach there was probably diamonds. We don't know, because, as I said, the story is, it's a legend, but as you know, legends are founded on a little bit of fact and a little bit of poetic license. But anyway, this is what happened. She heard that and so she mentioned it in passing while George was having a sip on what wasn't a castle, and as he left to go, he thought, "Oh, this sounds like my cup of tea." Now, as I said, it's just before Christmas. It's probably around about the 23rd, 24th, and she sort of said to him that this is going to be coming through, because I think that no one's going to want to stop anyone at that time. They'll all be having a party and Christmas lunch and Christmas dinner and whatever they do. Eventually, he decided that he was going to stand this ambush at the bottom of the hill. But unbeknown to him, there was a chap who was determined to get them through, the stagecoach driver. I'm just trying to think of what his name was. He was Jeremiah someone or other. Now, of course, just about everyone that came over from England at that stage had the name Jeremiah. And so he decided that night he would go and wait at the bottom. Of course, remember, he's got this jet black horse, which he could control very well, and they got on very well. I'm not going to say the horse's name was Best, because then you'll think it's... But his horse was very well trained, and sitting at the bottom of the pass there, on his horse, he knew what time this wagon was coming through, and it was coming through at night, so that they didn't expect anyone who'd be holding up stagecoach at that stage. The stagecoach had people on it as well, and anyway, set off from here. You can picture this going down the road here, this jangling of the horses' reins, and Jeremiah on the top cracking his whip to get them going. And of course, just to the top of the pass here, going down the hill, they had to sort of slow down, because of course they're going downhill, and the horses have to almost act as brakes as well. And this is why he set up his little ambush at the bottom of the hill. Now, while he was going down the hill there, he was thinking to himself, this is going to be a peach. I can easily get this load through here. Got these guys sitting in the compartment. He was sitting on this stuff that was supposed to be going from Kimberley through to Cape Town. And as he got to the bottom of the hill there, out jumps George. And I don't know what the highwayman used to say, stand and deliver. I think he probably got out there and he just stood there, and of course the coach stopped. And of course old Jeremiah was a bit of a hard ass. He wasn't going to stop it for anyone like this. He sort of reined it in slowly, and Deadshot George just stop. And he looked at him, and of course old Deadshot George had the good old pistols out like this. And the next thing is, Jeremiah made a bit of a mistake maybe. He took his whip and he snaked it out, and it cut straight across Deadshot George's eye. Well, you can imagine a shock. So what does he do? He shoots his pistols off, and one got Jeremiah right in the middle of the forehead here. Jeremiah falls off, and Deadshot George, as he would now be called, sort of was a little bit painful. There was blood pouring down his face here. He couldn't see properly, so he didn't actually get anything. And he spurred his horse off down the valley, because there were lots of paths there and all the rest of it, and he disappeared. The people on the, on the, uh, on the stagecoach decided that, well, this is going to be a peach. They were going to stop. And of course, the best for them would be to sort of try and wander back to Cadle's hotel here, and try and alert the authorities. Of course, you all know it's quite a climb up the hill there and all the rest of it. And they got back here, and of course they alerted the authorities. But by that stage, of course, Deadshot George had gone off. The following day, which would be Christmas Day, a group of mounted police went off to try and follow his spoor. And they could actually see the little drips of blood which had obviously come off from his eye. I mean, he was virtually blind in that eye. And he'd headed off. He had a little lair, which was just up over the hill here, other side Baileyville. There was a cave that he used to use as a sort of a stopgap for where he could stay and keep out of the way of authorities and things. And he must have ended up there for a day, maybe Christmas Day into Boxing Day, and he was in utter pain. And so he decided what he would do is he would go backtrack to little back roads here to the toll house, to the Pig and Whistle. And while he was there, he sort of managed to attract the attention of Liz. And the problem was that Liz's sister Mary was very jealous, and she'd alerted the authorities that he was coming there that night. Now, if you can picture this, I'm sure you can, where the stables are today, there was, before the fire, there was a lot of bush higher up on the other side of the road. And these guys were sitting waiting for him. These were the mounted police. And of course they were obviously waiting very quietly there. I suppose you could maybe just hear the odd jingle of the horses' bridles. But Deadshot George was in so much pain he didn't know what to do. And then suddenly they sprang out there, they lit up there. I don't know, you know those torches they used to have in those not ever ready ones, you know, the other ones, which used to burn at the top. And they set off after him. And Deadshot George came running down the road on his horse, all the way down here till he got to Cadle's hotel. And of course these guys were gaining on him all the time. He did a turn here, and just up the side of the sand, just the other side of the pool, he took off through Baileyville, which was a forest in those days, and ended up riding off towards what we call now Deadshot George's Leap. And these guys are gaining on him all the time. And then eventually they caught up with him, and they basically cornered him because there's nowhere to go except over and down. And that's when it all happened. Deadshot George decided he wasn't going to get caught, spurred his horse on right over the cliff there, down below, with obviously a piercing cry, and that was it. But Deadshot George is now over the top. These guys thinking, well, no person could have survived that jump. It's, those of you who don't know where School Rocks are, School Rocks are quite high, and any horse jumping from there would not likely to survive, and neither would the rider. So what they thought was, okay, this guy's dead, we'll go and check in the morning. So in the morning, one lot went out to where they'd seen him jump, and the other lot rode around down the valley, up along, until they could see the other guys. And they had a look at the bottom of just where he jumped, where they thought he jumped. And all they could find was a horseshoe. No Deadshot George, no horse, one horseshoe. That's all they could find. And it was obviously one that was off the horse, because it wasn't rusted or anything like that. And they thought, well, he's dead. We can't find him anywhere. So Deadshot George just vanished. Now I was told that that horseshoe is in the Cape Town Museum. I've never been to look. I don't know, but that horseshoe was in the museum. Deadshot George's horseshoe from whatever date it was, just after Christmas and New Year. Now, the story doesn't quite end there, because about, if you know the phases of the moon, about once every 30 years you have a full moon, and it had been a full moon that night, and Deadshot George had disappeared then. On that particular night was a full moon. Now, I'm told, I haven't witnessed this, I had a couple of other things that happened. I'm told that every full moon on New Year's, Christmas Eve, every full moon, Christmas Eve, if you stand quietly on the veranda outside the prep school there, the Cadles Hotel, and you sit quietly there, you can hear the horses' hooves. And first you hear one lot, and then you hear another lot going, and they head off here through Baileyville, up over the hill, and then you hear this piercing cry as Deadshot George leaps again. Now, well, as I say, the story doesn't quite end there. As a kid, we'd been to Carol's on Christmas Eve, and we were at Thornhill. We came back. Now, you know, there's next to that shop now, which is called Sandy, there's a house there. And we'd been there after Carol's, we'd taken over there, and we went there for, I suppose, a New Year's, Christmas Eve sort of get together, and we're having tea and stuff. I think the folks were having something a little bit stronger. And as it was time to sort of go to bed, by that stage, of course, most of us guys were kissed out, fast asleep. We just couldn't last any longer. We were sleeping under chairs and stuff, and eventually the folks picked us up and put us in the cars, and off we went. And we were coming back here. In those days there wasn't really the bottom road, it was just the top road. And we were coming back here, and I remember my dad had told me the story not long before this. And as we were coming along, the headlights of the car picked up, because it was late too, midnight. And you know how your mind works, you think, and there in front of us was the backside of a cow. So, of course, your mind thinks straight away, that's a horse. I was petrified. I was absolutely petrified. It took me 2 or 3 days to get over the shock. I think I was only about 5 or 6 then, but it really shocked me rigid. So, if any of you ever want to try and wait here, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, full moon, go and stand outside there very quietly. You might hear those horses' hooves coming past, and the final cry as Deadshot George leaped over, and, well, we don't know if he killed himself, because his body was never found. And that, my friends, is the story of Deadshot George.